Hey guys, tonight we slip back through time. You're not in your bed, but in a medieval cottage. The walls are rough timber and wattle, smeared with clay. A single candle flickers, its light trembling across the uneven ceiling. The air is cool, carrying the faint smell of damp earth and wood smoke. This is your world now, your life as a peasant girl in the Middle Ages. Before we begin, let me whisper a gentle request. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you want, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stir awake, your head resting on a lumpy straw mattress. The straw scratches a little, and you're grateful for the thin blanket of rough wool that keeps the chill away. Beside you, your family shifts and snores. Everyone sleeps in the same room. Privacy is a modern luxury. Here, warmth matters more than solitude. The cottage is small, barely one room wide. At the far end stands a rough hearth, a blackened pot hanging from an iron hook. Smoke curls upward, but the chimney is little more than a hole in the roof. So much of it lingers in the air. You blink, eyes watering, as the early morning sun slips through cracks in the shutters. Your first thoughts are not about school or hobbies. They're about survival. The fire must be coaxed alive again, and the animals need tending. It's strange to think. Your chores begin before you're even fully awake. Historians still argue whether peasant cottages had wooden floors or just bare earth. Some excavations suggest simple planks, others nothing more than packed dirt. In your case, your feet meet cold earth as you swing your legs down. It's uneven, dusty, and alive with the faint scuttle of a beetle retreating into shadows. You look around the room. Near the hearth, your father's tools lean against the wall. A hoe, a sickle, an axe with a handle worn smooth. Your mother's spinning wheel waits patiently, the thread left dangling from the last night's work. And in the corner, huddled in a wooden pen, two chickens blink sleepily, feathers puffed against the draft. It's a far cry from the soft comfort of the 21st century. But for you, this is ordinary life. The morning routine is simple, yet relentless. You help your mother stir the pot. Last night's barley gruel stretched into breakfast. It's thin, barely flavored with a pinch of salt, if you're lucky. Bread, too, if yesterday's baking went well. And sometimes goat's milk, fresh and slightly sour, poured into a rough clay cup. It may not sound like much, but in this time, it's fuel. Food is not about delight, it's about energy for labor. And as you chew the chewy crust of bread, you can almost hear your stomach negotiating with your body. Not tasty, perhaps, but it will do. There's a kind of humor here. Imagine a medieval Instagram. Photos of meal prep would be endless bowls of beige porridge. No sprinkles, no latte art, no fancy hashtags. Just survival one spoon at a time. But there are curiosities, too. Did you know some peasants used to believe placing iron near their bread would keep away evil spirits? Your mother sometimes sets a small iron nail on the shelf above the loaf. You don't question it. It's simply part of the rhythm of belief. Your family crosses themselves before eating, not just out of faith, but out of gratitude. For you know hunger waits around every corner. The memory of last year's poor harvest still lingers. And though this morning is ordinary, the fear of famine is always a silent guest at the table. When the meal ends, the candle has burned low, dripping wax into the clay holder. You stand, wipe crumbs from your woolen dress, and prepare for the day ahead. Outside, the sky is pale gray, and a rooster crows with unnecessary enthusiasm. Life is beginning again, just as it did yesterday, and will tomorrow. Your hair is tangled, your hands already rough from chores, and you're only a girl. Yet already, you carry the weight of survival. And still, you manage to smile. Because even in the Middle Ages, laughter slips through the cracks of hardship. A joke at the breakfast table, a warm glance from your mother, the silliness of a goat trying to chew on your dress hem. Life is harsh, but it is not without sparks of joy. Tonight, we've only just stepped into this world. A candlelit beginning, a small cottage, a family bound together by necessity, habit, and love. But remember, this is only the first breath of your journey. The fields await, and so do the endless chores. And before long, you'll discover that being a peasant girl in the Middle Ages is both ordinary and extraordinary. The morning air is cool as you step outside. Dew clings to the grass, sparkling faintly in the weak light of dawn. Your stomach feels only half full. The gruel was thin, the bread rough. But that is the shape of breakfast in your world. Not indulgence, but necessity. You chew on the last crumbs of yesterday's loaf as you watch your mother. She is already at the hearth again, feeding the flames, stirring the blackened pot with practiced patience. Soon, more gruel will simmer, enough for later in the day. The smell is faintly nutty, a reminder of barley and oats ground coarse. It is not delicious, not memorable, but it fills a space inside you. Historians still argue whether peasants ate more bread or more porridge. Records suggest bread was the heart of the medieval diet, but regional harvests often decided otherwise. For your village, barley is common, rye more reliable, and wheat. Wheat is a rare luxury. When a loaf of white bread appears, it is like a feast. Bread is more than food. It is the measure of life itself. The French phrase pain quotidien, daily bread, still carries echoes of survival. And you feel that truth in your hands as you clutch a chunk of coarse brown crust. There's a kind of rhythm to it. In the morning, bread. At midday, bread. In the evening, more bread. Sometimes dipped in broth, sometimes torn into pottage, sometimes stale and hard as stone. But always bread. You smile faintly. Imagine an endless buffet of sandwiches, except without meat, without cheese, without the buffet. Just bread. And sometimes, if fortune smiles, goat's milk to wash it down. The goat bleats from the small pen behind the cottage. Her name is Brindle, her fur mottled brown and white. You love her, though she often smells like she's rolled in something better left unmentioned. She provides milk for your family, and milk means life. This morning, you crouch beside her with a clay jug, your small hands clumsy on the wooden pail. The warm liquid foams and splashes, and you lick a drop from your finger. It tastes strong, a little sour, but comforting. Like the goat herself has passed her stubbornness into the drink. Your mother adds a pinch of salt when she stores it to help it last longer. Sometimes it turns to curds, sometimes into a soft cheese spread over bread. And in winter, when the goats give less, the loss is felt deeply. There are small curiosities hidden in these routines. One neighbor insists goat's milk can cure headaches. Another swears a splash rubbed on the forehead wards off evil spirits. You're not so sure, but you don't laugh either. Superstition clings to everything in the village, as constant as the smoke rising from every hearth. And bread itself carries mystery. Did you know some bakers in medieval towns were fined for short loaves? The size of bread made sure bread was the right weight. If it wasn't, punishment could be harsh. Sometimes the baker's loaves were given away for free. Sometimes he was locked in the stocks. Imagine a world where your local baker is the most closely regulated man in town. By midday, the bread and gruel return in a thicker form. Pottage, grains boiled with cabbage, beans if you're lucky, maybe an onion or turnip. Everything goes into the same pot, and the flavor depends on whatever survived the garden. It's never quite the same twice, but it is always familiar. You sip from a wooden bowl, feeling the warmth spread through your belly. The rhythm of your day, like everyone else's, is built on this bowl of hot mush. And though the taste is plain, it carries a quiet comfort. You know, in some way, it keeps you alive. Yet hunger is always close. There are years when the bread fails, when mildew ruins the rye, when a rainy season drowns the barley. You have heard stories of people eating bark or grass in those times. And though you have never faced such famine yourself, the fear whispers through every meal. Every crumb of bread is a small victory. You take another bite. The crust crumbles. The goat sighs. And the day moves forward. Life is simple, yet not without joy. You lick the last taste of milk from your lips. You laugh as Brindle tries to nibble your sleeve. And though the bread is coarse, you hold it as if it is treasure. Because in this world, it truly is. Still, your day is just beginning. The fields call, the tools wait, and the work of survival is only half written. And you will soon learn that the hardest part of your life as a peasant girl is that chores never end. The sun has barely crept above the horizon, but already your family is moving toward the fields. You carry no watch, no clock. Time is measured by light, by shadows, by the cries of roosters. Your hands, still sticky from goat's milk, now clutch a wooden rake and a small basket. The day's labor lies ahead, and you cannot delay. The air smells of damp soil. Mist rises from the meadows, swirling like pale smoke before the warmth of the sun burns it away. Your bare feet sink slightly into the ground, cold dew soaking the hem of your wool dress. Every step reminds you, the land gives life, but it demands everything in return. Your family works on land that is not your own. The fields belong to the lord of the manor, and you are his tenant. You owe him labor as part of the rent. Today, it is barley that needs weeding, and you kneel with aching knees, tugging stubborn plants from the earth. Historians still argue whether peasants spent most of their days on their own tiny plots or on the Lord's. Some records suggest long weeks of boon work during planting and harvest seasons. Others point out that families balance both, always torn between obligation and survival. For you, it hardly matters. The weeds don't care about debates. They grow endlessly, and your hands must follow. The tools are crude. A wooden hoe, its edge chipped. A rake with teeth uneven. An iron-tipped plow dragged by oxen in the distance, groaning and shuddering as it cuts the soil. Every scrape, every swing is heavy, awkward, and tiring. And yet, you find rhythm. A push, a pull. A weed yanked, a sigh released. The body remembers, and though you are young, your arms already know the ache of repetition. Sometimes you let your mind wander. You picture modern gyms, people lifting weights for health, for beauty, for sport. You laugh softly. Here, the medieval gym is the open field, and the reward is not toned muscles. It is survival. The Lord Steward rides past on a horse. He watches with sharp eyes, making sure everyone works their share. His cloak flaps behind him, a little more expensive than anything you could ever wear. He says nothing, but his silence is heavy. You bend lower to the soil, pretending you did not see him pass. There is curiosity even here in the dirt. Your neighbor swears by planting beans on the feast day of Saint Swithin. Another insists that scattering ashes around the field keeps away pests. Your own mother whispers blessings over seeds before burying them. Historians may laugh at such rituals, but for you, they are part of the fabric of survival. And there are facts, too. It was in these very centuries that the three-field system spread across Europe. 2 fields worked, 1 left fallow, rotating every year. It allowed more harvest, more resilience, and, slowly, more people. You don't think about the math of it, but you live it in every furrow and ridge. The hours stretch. The sun climbs. Sweat dampens your back, trickling into the coarse fabric of your dress. Your fingers sting with tiny cuts where weeds fight back with thorns. And still, you keep going, because the barley must grow, and hunger waits for no one. There is a strange comfort in the routine. You pull, you plant, you breathe. The fields echo with sounds, oxen grunting, birds calling, the rhythmic thud of hoes striking soil. A chorus of work, ancient and endless. At midday you pause. Bread again. Maybe a piece of onion, sharp and biting, to flavor the meal. You sit on the edge of a furrow, your legs stretched out, dirt caked under your nails. You chew slowly, grateful for shade beneath a hedgerow. A blackbird hops nearby, bold enough to eye your crumbs. For a moment, you forget the steward, the weeds, the ache. For a moment, the world feels almost gentle. But the day is not over. The fields demand more. Afternoon drags into evening, and when finally you rise to return home, your body is sore, your face flushed, your dress heavy with dirt. And yet, this is only one kind of work. For when the fields rest, your home still waits. The animals need care. The water must be fetched, the clothes mended. You sigh softly, realizing the truth every peasant girl learns early. Chores never end. You return from the fields with dirt clinging to your dress and fatigue clinging to your shoulders. But there is no pause, no gentle break between field work and home life. The moment you step inside the cottage, another rhythm takes over, one of ceaseless, smaller labors that fill the gaps between sunrise and sunset. The fire needs tending. You crouch by the hearth, feeding it twigs and coaxing sparks back to life. Without fire, there is no warmth, no food, no light. It becomes an unspoken member of the family, greedy and demanding, always hungry for fuel. Then the water. Your village has no faucet, no pump at your door. Instead, you carry a wooden pail to the nearest well, half a mile away. The path is worn smooth by countless feet, muddy after rains, dusty in the dry months. You lean your weight against the rope, hauling up the bucket that drips with cold, heavy life. Some historians argue whether medieval women carried water daily or whether children were often tasked instead. But tonight, it is you, your hands raw from the rope, your arms trembling under the slosh of the pail. The water sloshes against your legs, darkening the wool. A drop spills into your shoe, cold and unwelcome, but you say nothing. Clothes wait in a heap by the hearth. Wool tunics, patched and repatched, worn thin at the elbows. You thread a needle and begin to mend. The light is poor, flickering and dim, and your eyes strain with each stitch. But mending is survival. Without it, your family would shiver in rags. You remember something curious. In some villages, spinning and weaving were so essential that unmarried women were called spinsters. The word still lingers centuries later, though now with a different meaning. But here in your cottage, the spinning wheel hums softly, a steady song of patience. The thread winds tighter, and your family's clothes live to see another season. Animals demand their share of time. The chickens must be fed scraps, their eggs collected gently from straw nests. The goat needs her stall cleaned, her rope untangled. Even the pig grunts impatiently, rooting for food in the dirt floor. You wrinkle your nose at the smell. It clings to everything, a perfume of mud, hay, and manure. And yet, you love them. These creatures are part of your survival, part of your days. Without them, there would be no eggs, no milk, no meat in the rare years when fortune allows. Evening closes in, but the chores continue. What must be chopped before darkness swallows the yard. Your father swings the axe, but you gather the splinters and smaller sticks. The pile grows slowly, and your arms ache. But you think of winter, of frost creeping under the door, and you work harder. Historians still argue whether medieval cottages had chimneys or simply holes in the thatch for smoke. In your home, the smoke curls freely, staining the beams black, filling the air with a sting that makes your eyes water. You cough, wave your hand, but you endure, because without smoke, there would be no fire, and without fire, nothing else matters. Sometimes, humor creeps into even these chores. You watch your younger brother chase a chicken in circles, feathers flying, his shouts echoing like a farce. You laugh, forgetting for a moment the weariness of your hands. Even goats can be comedians, tugging at your hair with mischievous persistence. And though you sigh, you smile too. The cottage grows darker as the candle burns low. Your family eats again, bread dipped into pottage, the same flavors as always. You sip slowly, your body heavy, your eyes blinking against exhaustion. The meal is not a feast, but it is comfort. And in comfort, you find strength to face another day. But as you stretch your hands toward the fire, you realize the truth again. There is no true end to the work. The moment you rest, the chores are waiting. The moment you sleep, the morning begins its cycle anew. Chores never end. And yet, there is tomorrow's hope. For sometimes, between all the labor, you find the village green. And there, just sometimes, joy outweighs burden. Morning and evening blur with chores, but sometimes the path bends toward a different rhythm. In the heart of the village lies a patch of common ground, wide, open, and alive with footsteps. The village green is not grand, not manicured, not like the neat parks of modern towns. It is uneven, muddy in places, dusty in others. But it is the pulse of the community, the place where life stretches beyond your cottage walls. You step into the space, your feet crunching on scattered straw. Children chase each other in circles, their laughter rising above the chatter of women carrying baskets. Old men lean on sticks, trading stories with voices as cracked as the earth beneath them. And in the corner, a group of boys throw stones at a wooden target, shouting bets and boasts. The green is not just for play, it is for gathering, for hearing news, for seeing and being seen. It is a stage where the simplest gestures become entertainment, and gossip is as common as the air. Today, a fiddler has come from a neighboring village. He draws his bow across the strings, the sound both sharp and sweet. The tune is clumsy, yet it pulls feet into rhythm. Your neighbors clap. A few couples step into a rough dance, skirts twirling in dusty arcs. You smile, your own toes tapping against the earth. Historians still argue whether peasants had much leisure at all. Some say their lives were nothing but toil. Others point to church records, songs, and accounts of village feasts that suggest laughter threaded through the hardship. And here, in this moment, with music humming and smiles spreading, you feel the latter must be true. But it is not only joy that gathers here. On the green, disputes are whispered into the open. Someone accuses a neighbor of stealing firewood. Another complains about grazing rights. The crowd listens, nods, takes sides. There is no grand courtroom, only the judgment of peers. And sometimes, those judgments sting worse than the stocks. Curiosity creeps in through smaller details, too. One villager swears that walking counterclockwise around the green 3 times at dusk will cure warts. Another insists a patch of grass near the oak tree never grows because of a fairy's curse. You listen wide-eyed, unsure if you should laugh or shiver. Games fill the air as well. Children play, hoop and stick, rolling wooden circles across the ground. Young men wrestle, their shouts echoing into the evening. Girls toss balls made of rags tied tight, squealing when one soars in a crowd. The games are simple, but they carry the thrill of competition, the joy of forgetting work for just a while. You join, laughing with friends, cheeks flushed. It is strange how quickly the weight of chores falls away in this place. The green is a pocket of freedom, however brief. And sometimes traveling performers arrive. A juggler tossing wooden balls, a fool in patched clothes mocking the steward behind his back. Their tricks are small, their jokes coarse, but the crowd roars with delight. You laugh too, though you keep glancing over your shoulder. What if the steward heard? Still, the fool bows low, his grin wide, and coins clink into his cap. It is a reminder, joy has value, even here where food and labor rule the hours. As dusk falls, the green changes shape. The crowd thins, voices soften. The fiddler packs away his bow. A woman lights a torch, its glow dancing on the oak's branches. Shadows stretch across the ground, and the laughter fades into murmurs. The green is never truly empty. It holds the memory of footsteps, the echo of laughter, the whisper of quarrels. You walk home slowly, your heart lighter. The chores will return. The fields will demand you. But for now, you carry the memory of music and dust and warmth. Sleep creeps gently into your bones as you settle back into the cottage. And as you close your eyes, you think of tomorrow's Sunday bells. Church will summon you, the priest will speak, and faith will bind the hours together. But for now, you drift, half smiling, half dreaming, caught between duty and joy. The morning begins not with the call of roosters, but with the toll of the church bell. It rolls across the fields, slow and heavy, like a voice older than memory itself. You wake to the sound, knowing this day is different. No hoe in hand, no rush to the barley rows. Instead, the whole village turns its steps toward the same stone building, the church, towering over cottages like a guardian of souls. You pull on your best dress, though best simply means the least patched, the least stained by earth. Your mother smooths your hair, braids it with patient fingers. For a moment, you almost feel noble, though the mirror, a polished piece of metal, quickly reminds you otherwise. The church does not care about wealth. It cares about presence. The path to the church is crowded. Neighbors shuffle forward, children trailing like restless chicks, old women leaning on sticks. Everyone comes because everyone must. Even the Lord himself attends, sitting near the front with his family, a visual reminder that God and hierarchy march hand in hand. Inside, the air is cool and shadowed. Stone walls rise high above your head, damp with centuries of breath and candle smoke. You smell beeswax and incense, sharp and strange compared to the smoke of your hearth. Light filters through a tiny stained glass window, reds and blues pooling on the floor like spilled paint. Your eyes widen at the colors, so different from the browns and grays of home. Historians still argue how much peasants understood of the Latin Mass. Some say it was an incomprehensible murmur, more magic than meaning. Others believe villagers caught fragments, enough to weave into daily life. You, sitting cross-legged near your mother, hear the priest's words like distant thunder. The Latin slips past you, but the rhythm sinks in, soothing, unbroken. The rituals speak louder than words. The priest lifts the chalice high, and the congregation bows. Candles flicker, bells chime, incense curls upward like whispered prayers. You cross yourself clumsily, copying your mother's hand. Even if you don't understand, you feel the weight, the sense that this moment matters, even if the meaning is wrapped in mystery. Curiosities linger at the edges of faith. Your neighbor swears that touching the church wall during service cures backache. Another insists the relic inside, a fragment of a saint's fingerbone, can heal fever. You don't know if it's true, but you glance toward the relic box anyway, just in case. After Mass, the church green swells with voices. Men haggle over debts. Women whisper about marriages. Children dash among the gravestones, laughing too loudly until scolded. The church is not only God's house. It is the bulletin board of the village, the courtroom, the meeting hall, the stage. Here, promises are made, secrets traded, alliances sealed with handshakes. Your own family lingers. Your father listens to a neighbor speak of selling a pig. Your mother exchanges recipes for pottage, comparing onions to leeks. And you stand quietly, eyes lifted to the tower bell, wondering how many Sundays it has rung before you and how many after. Sometimes you imagine the priest differently. If he were alive today, perhaps he would run a YouTube channel, his sermons compressed into 10-minute videos, his Latin swapped for subtitles. You giggle softly at the thought, then quickly hide your smile when your mother frowns. Faith is no place for jokes, or at least, not here, not openly. As afternoon slips by, you walk home again. The fields rest for now, your chores pause, but the sense of reverence lingers in your chest. The bell still hums in your ears. The smell of incense clings to your dress. You feel smaller, yes, but also bound to something larger, like a thread tied to the very sky. And as the candle is lit that evening, you realize faith is not just prayer. It is rhythm. It is ritual. It is the pause that makes the labor bearable. Tomorrow, the market will return, the noise and bustle of barter and bargains, and you will see how the world stretches wider than your cottage walls. The road to market is already crowded when you set out. Baskets sway on hips. Carts creak like sleepy oxen. Dust rises and hangs in the early light. It tastes faintly of straw and last year's harvest. You lick your lips and keep walking. The market sits where three roads meet, a triangle of noise, color, and smells you can name from memory. Smoke, bread, leather, animals. Stalls bloom like rough canvas flowers. Poles lean, ropes groan, flags flap lazily. Someone is already shouting the price of onions. You clutch your family's eggs in a woven basket. Each shell is a tiny promise. Each coin you hope to earn is a tiny future. A woman waves you over with a grin that could sell rain to the sea. She offers ribbons the color of pomegranate seeds. You trace the weave with your finger, then shake your head. Luxury is for later. The noise thickens as the crowd swells. Chickens complain in wicker cages. A pig announces its opinions to the sky. You breathe deeper, letting the market fill your senses. The village green is familiar. The market is possibility. Here, the world seems wider than the hedges. You pass a baker's table piled with loaves. Some are round and smiling, others long and stern. A dusting of flour makes tiny clouds with every touch. A well-known fact: towns with a royal or seigneurial charter could hold official market days. The right to trade was a privilege, written and sealed. Prices, weights, even the size of a loaf could be regulated under the size of bread. The baker catches your eye. He hefts a loaf as if it were a newborn, swears its honest weight by St. Martin. You remember, short-weight bread could mean fines, or worse, the stocks. You think of the iron nail over the loaf back home. Magic for safety, law for fairness. Between the two, somehow families eat. On a corner, a cloth merchant smooths out yards of wool. He measures with a stick longer than your arm, the L. His voice sings, die fast. Whether true, wedding good, your fingers sink into a bolt of plain brown. It feels like the future of a new dress, sturdy and forgiving. But you count the eggs again and sigh. Nearby, a potter stacks jugs with the tenderness of a poet. Clay gleams in bands of red and smoke gray. He taps one. It answers with a hollow ring like a small bell. A tinker hammers a dent from a pan. Sparks fly, golden brief. You step back, laughing when one chases your toes. Then come a marvels. A juggler throws 3 wooden balls, then 4, then a knife. A circle forms as if conjured. A fool in a patched, motley balances on a barrel. He bows toward the absent lord, then sticks out his tongue to roars of scandalized delight. Irreverence tastes sweeter in a crowd. A traveling tooth puller holds up a pair of gleaming pincers. He promises relief faster than a prayer. You look away, but part of you leans closer. Curiosity tiptoes behind him. Bottles of miracle water, packets of herb powders, a salve that banishes sorrow. He coughs for emphasis, as if healed mid-sentence. Coins clink anyway. Someone swears at a dried toad, sewn into a pouch prevents toothache. Another offers a sprig of rosemary to chase nightmares. You tuck a leaf into your sleeve, just in case. Historians still argue whether peasants were mostly self-sufficient or deeply tied to markets. Some read manorial records and see a life anchored to fields and dues. Others point to coin fines, tolls, and fares, evidence of trade pulsing even in small places. You don't solve the question, you live its answer. You bring eggs, hope for salt, maybe a cheap needle. If the price of onions is kind, a treat, a twist of honeyed nuts wrapped in paper. At the far end, spice floats like a rumor. Pepper pricks your nose, cinnamon warms the air, saffron glows like sunlight ground to threads. A truth you've heard, These spices travel from very far away, riding caravans and ships. The route sounds like a bedtime spell, east to west, sea to port, pack horse to market. You smile. Bedtime spells are your favorite kind of truth. The merchant opens a small casket. Inside, a dried brown curl, ginger, he whispers as if saying a secret name. You can't afford even a pinch, but the scent alone feels like luxury. Coins pass hand to hand. Smooth pennies, clipped edges, faces half erased by time. You feel the thrill of cold metal and count twice. Barter hums beneath the clatter of money. Eggs for onions. A morning's mending for a spool of thread. A friar moves through the throng with a smile big enough for everyone. He tells a parable about generosity, the kind that leaves your pockets lighter and your heart oddly full. You nod along, not quite understanding the lesson, but liking the sound of it. A scribe sets out goose quills and a tiny inkhorn. He writes names for a copper, letters like vines curling across scrap parchment. You consider asking him to write yours, just to see how it looks on the page. There's a thrill, too, in news. A peddler speaks of a fair 2 towns over, so large that horses were bells to keep families from losing each other. Someone mutters about a levy for repairs to the Lord's mill. A widow sells ribbons while telling of a comet last winter. She says it looked like God's own broom sweeping the stars. You feel a small shiver that is not entirely fear. A well-known fair, so the miller claims, is the Champagne Fair, a river of cloth and coin where deals can buy a lifetime of comfort. He speaks as if he's seen it. You suspect his feet never left these ruts. Still, the story wraps around the crowd like a scarf. You pause to eat a heel of bread dipped in warm ale. It's soft as a sigh, and your shoulders unclench. The market has its own lullaby. Coins, clucks, calls, and an easy hum. Sleepy refrain, soft and low. Breathe in bread. Breathe out worry. Breathe in spice. Breathe out the road. Let the crowd rock you the way water rocks a boat. Let the noise become distant geese crossing a winter sky. Let your eyes half close and stay safe among voices. When the eggs are gone and the purse a little heavier, you turn for home. You glance back at the painted ribbons one last time. Color can wait. Needles cannot. A final marvel catches your eye. A pilgrim badge shaped like a tiny shell. Pinned to a cloak, it says the wearer has traveled and returned. You touch your sleeve and imagine that journey for a heartbeat longer than it takes to breathe. Historians still argue whether women dominated small-scale trade on market days. Some guild rules limited stalls. Some villages ignored such rules entirely. You picture yourself behind a table, selling spun thread by the ounce of patience. The road narrows as the day thins. Your feet find a ruts as if they were lines you've read before. The basket is lighter, your steps are not. At the cottage door, the familiar smells return. Smoke, wool, the warm breath of animals. You tuck away the needles, the salt, the little coil of twine that will improbably hold a season together. The marvels fade, but their echo lingers like spice in the air. Soon, sickness will brush the village, as it always does with the turning of seasons. Remedies will crowd the table beside faith and fear, and you will learn which cures comfort and which merely glimmer. But that is for another dusk. For now, let the market's murmurs soften into evening. Let your hands rest. Tomorrow, when illness whispers, you'll open the cupboard of charms and simples, and you'll discover how strange remedies can be. Illness arrives quietly. A cough at supper, a stitch of pain that will not loosen. You feel it first as heaviness behind the eyes. Your mother feels your forehead, then your wrists. Heat and damp, she murmurs, thinking in elements. In this world, bodies are weather. Too much heat, too much cold, too much wet, too much dry. Balance is health, imbalance is trouble. A well-known fact. Medieval medicine rests on the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. Galen's old map is still the doctor's compass. If you're hot and moist, cooling and drying remedies are the cure. So the kitchen becomes a pharmacy. Honey waits in a crook of wood, sweet, golden, almost holy. Garlic sits like a small white moon, smelling of courage and fields. Your mother crushes a clove with the flat of knife. She folds it into warm milk, stirs with a wooden spoon that has cured more colds than any priest. You hold your nose, drink, feel the heat bloom in your chest. Historians still argue whether folk remedies were mostly effective simples or comforting rituals. Some point to honey's real antiseptic power. Others say belief is the strongest leaf in the jar. You remember other cures whispered over bread and bowls. The iron nail above the loaf to keep mischief away. Goat's milk on the forehead because stubbornness might scare fever. Out come herbs. Yarrow like feathery green lace. Fennel seeds that crack between teeth with a licorice sigh. A sprig of rosemary steeps in hot water. The steam lifts into your face like a blessing. You breathe slowly, counting heartbeats as if they were beads on a rosary. The village wise woman arrives with a leather pouch. She smells of smoke and lavender, of rain-damp hedgerow. Her hands are brown with the memory of roots. She looks at your tongue, your eyes, the color of your cheeks. She listens to your cough and nods as if the sound were a line in a book. Not grave, she says, but you must be cooled. Out of her pouch comes a tiny packet, powdered violets crushed to a purple dusk. She mixes them with honey and a breath of vinegar. The taste is tart and floral, like swallowing a garden at evening. A curiosity, bright and odd. A urine chart painted like a wheel of sunrise. Some healers read health from the color of a vial. Straw, apple, amber, claret, each shade a sentence in the body's grammar. Today your water is pale as oat straw. The wise woman nods again, satisfied. Light broth, no heavy bread, she warns, ignoring your hopeful glance toward the pantry. Your mother ties a charm at your wrist. A red thread, knotted 3 times. Not medicine, exactly, more like a promise. Historians still argue whether the church condemned such charms or quietly allowed them, if the words were Christian. In practice, villagers wove faith through everything. A psalm over a sow felt like good manners, like washing hand before supper. You become the center of many small attentions. A poultice of warm bread and herbs rests on your chest. A cup of willow bark tea cools your mouth with a bitter meadow. A neighbor recommends laying a copper coin beneath your tongue. For drawing heat, she says, as if metal could sip fever like ale. You pass on that one. Your teeth have suffered enough. The wise woman tells a story while the poultice breathes warmth. Once, she says, a man carried a baked onion in his pocket all winter so his chest would remember the sun. You smile, picturing a pocket that smelled like a soup pot. Another curiosity edges past laughter. A dried toad, sewn in a pouch and hung by the bed to banish night sweats. You do not ask to see it. Some magics are better as rumors. There are physicians, too, in market towns, men with books in Latin and long sleeves. They talk of astrology and humors and bleedings that rebalance the starry weather inside you. But their fees are the kind that turn purses hollow. Leeches live in a jar at the edge of one such table. They writhe like commas in a sentence you cannot bear to finish. You decide that garlic milk is beautiful after all. A well-known fact. Monastic infirmaries tended the sick with broths, baths, and quiet order. Her gardens behind cloister walls became green libraries of remedy. Sage, rue, betony mint. Illness, in those places, met silence and scripture. Your village has no infirmary. Only hands that know the difference between a fever and a fright. Hands that have delivered babies and stitched cuts and sat through long nights, praying and changing cloths. To be poor is to be tended by love and weeds. Sleepy refrain, slow and cool. Breathe in mint. Breathe out heat. Breathe in lavender. Breathe out worry. Let the broth steam like a soft cloud under your nose. Let the window leak a line of moonlight across the floor. Let the cough loosen the way a knot loosens under patient fingers. Historians still argue whether women healers were tolerated or feared. The wise woman says softly, surprising you. In some seasons, they seek our hands. In others, our names. Her smile is small, and you understand more than the words. She leaves a jar of salve by the hearth, lard and beeswax and marigold petals like buried suns. For chapped hands, for sore knees, for winter. She also leaves advice. Change the rushes on the floor. Smoke breeds in the old ones. You glance at the darkened bundles and nod. Clean is a kind of cure. By evening, your head is lighter. The cough still nips, but the bark has softened to a polite tap. You feel almost giddy with relief, as if a weight has remembered how to float. Your mother laughs when you ask for a second bowl of pottage. That's the best medicine, she says, handing you the spoon with ceremony. You eat slowly, letting warmth move through you like a candle carried room to room. Before sleep, you touch the red thread at your wrist. You remember the iron nail above the loaf. You think how remedies are sometimes hands, sometimes herbs, sometimes hope. At the door, the night is a cool cloth on your face. Stars hang like pinpricks in a dark healer's tent. You breathe deep, once, twice, as if the sky were a medicine chest too. Tomorrow the wheel turns to work that does not ask permission. Wool waits like patient clouds, and looms creak like small ships in a steady tide. Your fingers will learn a different ache, the soft ache of thread. But for now, sip the last of the rosemary water. Roll to your side. Let the cough drift farther away with each slow breath. The remedies have done what they can. The rest belongs to sleep, and to the warp and weft of the coming day. The cough fades, the fever lifts, and soon your hands find their way back to work. This time not in the fields, not in the smoke of the hearth, but in the softer, endless task of wool. Every household spins, every household weaves. Clothing is not bought ready-made. It is pulled from sheep, twisted into thread, stretched across looms, and worn until it frays into memory. The sheep graze just beyond the hedgerows. Their bleats carry on the wind, a reminder of the coats they will soon surrender. Shearing is a family affair. Wool cut close to the skin, rolled into bundles that smell of lanolin and pasture. Your father jokes that you could grease an axle with a single fleece. He isn't wrong. The oil clings stubbornly to your fingers. The wool is filthy. Burrs tangled deep, dirt clotted at the tips, twigs hidden like tiny traps. You pick and pull, your lap growing a mound of debris. It is slow, fussy work, but there is no shortcut. Cloth begins in patience. Carding comes next, combing the fibers into alignment. Two flat paddles bristling with metal teeth, dragged across each other until the wool loosens and straightens. Your arms ache from the motion, but the wool grows soft, a cloud caught in human hands. When you hold it up to the window, light filters through, making halos at your fingertips. Historians still argue how much wool England exported in the Middle Ages versus how much stayed in village homes. Some records suggest rivers of fleece flowed to Flanders, feeding grand looms in faraway cities. Others point to cottage economies where every girl, every mother, made thread until her fingers stung. You, with your lap full of cloud and combs, know both could be true. Spinning is its own rhythm. You sit at the wheel, foot pressing the treadle, fingers teasing out fibers into a thread as thin as breath. The spindle whirls, humming like a bee. One slip and the thread breaks. One moment of care and it holds. You sigh, start again, feel pride when the yarn winds thicker. A curiosity. Unmarried women, always spinning, came to be called spinsters. Centuries later the word would twist into something different. But here is simply truth. To spin is to live. Your thread is your dowry, your future, your contribution to the family chest. Your younger brother mocks you with a grin. Spin, spin like a spider. You throw a tuft of wool at his head, and he sneezes, laughing until your mother hushes him. Humor sneaks in even here, tucked between fibers. When enough thread gathers, the loom takes over. Wooden beams creak, pegs rattle, the warp stretch taut like a harp of string. You lift the shuttle, pass it back and forth, back and forth. The weft grows under your eyes, a fabric forming where before there was only emptiness. The loom sings if you listen closely. Thud, swish, pull. Thud, swish, pull. It is not music, but it has a kind of lullaby in its repetition. Your fingers redden, skin rubbed thin by yarn. You pause to blow on them, shake them out, and start again. There is no softness without labor. The cloth must come, even if it costs you blisters. Some villagers whisper charms for weaving. A silver coin tied to the loom beam for good luck. A psalm muttered when the first thread is knotted. One neighbor swears a spider web tucked beneath the shuttle keeps moths away. You laugh, but you tuck the story away for later, just in case. Historians still argue whether peasant families kept the best cloth or sold it for coin. You think of fairs where bolts of wool vanished into merchant packs. You think of winters where a thicker cloak meant survival. The debate is scholarly. The choice is always immediate. You dream sometimes of colors. Blue from woad, deep as river dusk. Red from madder, glowing like embers. Yellow from weld, bright as dawn. But dye is costly, and your family's clothes remain the color of sheep and earth. Still, a small scrap of dyed thread in a hem feels like treasure. The day stretches, the cloth grows, and your body bends with the rhythm. When evening comes, you hold up the fabric to the candle. It is rough, uneven, humble, and yet it is something from nothing, shelter born from sheep. Sleepy refrain. Breathe in wool. Breathe out ache. Breathe in rhythm. Breathe out thought. The loom slows, the treadle stills, the shuttle rests. You rub your sore fingers and smile faintly. Because tomorrow, the work continues. And sometimes, it brings not cloth, but celebration. Tomorrow, you'll see the village shift into laughter and song. For festivals come like bright stains on the brown cloth of life. And you'll find yourself in the heart of fools and feasts. Work weaves the days together, but festivals tear the fabric wide open. They arrive with bells, with banners, with noise too big for the narrow lanes of the village. For one day, sometimes two, the ordinary rules bend. Chores pause, laughter swells, and the world turns itself inside out. You feel it first in the morning air. Drums thump faintly from the green, voices rise. The smell of roasting meat drifts through the hedges. Your mother smooths your dress, braids your hair, and smiles in a way that feels lighter than usual. Even she cannot resist the holiday. The village green, so familiar, is suddenly unrecognizable. Stalls bloom brighter than market day. Flags snap overhead, stitched in colors rarely seen outside of dreams. Children dart with sticky fingers, their faces smudged with honey. At the center, a maypole rises like a giant stalk of candy, ribbons streaming in the breeze. Young girls, perhaps including you, clutch ribbons in trembling hands. You circle, step, twist, laugh, weaving colors tighter and tighter until the pole is dressed in stripes. Music pounds from fiddles and drums. A bagpiper wheezes out a tune that sounds equal parts song and argument. Feet stamp, hands clap, couples twirl until their cheeks glow crimson. The ground shakes with joy. Historians still argue whether peasants had too many feast days. Some records suggest dozens. Saints' days, harvest festivals, even midwinter revels. Critics scolded that no work was being done. Yet the very survival of memory may owe itself to those pauses of laughter and song. And here, the critics must have been wrong. For the air itself seems to heal when the drums play. The fool appears, striding onto a barrel in patched motley. His cap jingles with tiny bells, his grin wider than the horizon. He bows toward the manor house. Then, scandal, mocks the steward's limp with exaggerated hops. The crowd gasps, then bursts into laughter, hands clapping, eyes watering. The fool is licensed to break rules. For one day, he says what others dare not. He is both shield and mirror, his jokes safer than complaints. And you laugh until your sides ache, knowing the steward cannot punish mirth itself. Curiosities scatter through the crowd. A bear on a chain dances to a drum, swaying like a clumsy uncle. A troop of mummers wears masks of beasts, stag, boar, crow, performing a story older than memory. Children shriek and hide, then peek through fingers, hungry for more fright. A tooth puller sets up a chair, promising quick relief. One man sits, white-knuckled, and the crowd cheers as the tooth comes free. A trumpet blares the victory, and the patient, pale and wobbly, is offered ale. Laughter and sympathy mingle. Medicine, once again, is performance. Food is everywhere. Spit-roasted meat drips fat into the flames. Pies, crammed with apples and spice, steam beneath their crusts. Even the poor taste sweetness, for generosity spills easier on feast days. You bite into a slice of pie and close your eyes. The cinnamon is faint, barely there, but enough to paint the tongue with wonder. You smile, cheeks sticky, as if fortune itself had baked you a gift. Games and contests flare across the field. Men wrestle, their arms locked, dust rising with every fall. Boys hurl stones at posts, measuring pride by distance. Girls sing riddles at each other, the loser blushing as the crowd teases. A curiosity spreads. Some whisper that the loudest laugh at the festival will have a year of good fortune. Others insist the fool chooses a king of misrule, a peasant crowned with straw to mock nobility. You laugh harder, just in case, clutching your side until tears spill. As twilight deepens, torches flare. Music grows slower, softer, a lull after the storm. Couples slip away into the shadows, hands brushing like secret prayers. The fool collapses in mock exhaustion, sprawling on the ground to final applause. The air is thick with smoke and warmth, with the perfume of ale and apple. Your hair smells of bonfire, your cheeks sting from smiling. The festival lingers in your bones like the aftertaste of honey. Historians still argue whether these festivals gave peasants escape or reinforced order. Did laughter release rebellion or remind people of their place? Perhaps both. But to you, none of that matters. The ribbons still cling to your fingers. The fool's cap still jingles in your ears. Sleepy refrain, carried by drums. Breathe in laughter. Breathe out burden. Breathe in music. Breathe out fear. Let the fool's bells echo until they fade into crickets. Let the torches blur into stars. Let your feet remember the rhythm long after you close your eyes. Tomorrow, life returns. Work whispers responsibilities. And soon, you will feel the weight of softer but sharper things. Love, glances, rumors that ripple like water through reeds. The festival fades, but its echoes linger. The ribbons are tucked away, the torches burned out, yet something lingers in the air, something softer, warmer. You notice it most when eyes meet a little longer than usual, when laughter carries a note that wasn't there before. Love, or something like it, slips quietly into the village. You're old enough now for whispers to follow your steps. The women at the well lower their voices when you pass, their smiles knowing. A neighbor winks when your path crosses with a boy's. Even your mother clears her throat too quickly when the conversation drifts toward marriage. Courtship here is not roses and serenades. It is glances by the bread stall, shoulders brushing at the maypole, a boy offering the choicest apple at market. Small gestures, but heavy with meaning. A gift of ribbon might as well be a sonnet. Historians still argue how much choice medieval peasants had in love. Were marriages arranged entirely by parents, or did young hearts sneak in their own decisions? Some records suggest stern bargains, land for land, dowry for dowry. Others preserve songs of lovers meeting in fields, of secret promises beneath hedgerows. Perhaps the truth lies, as always, somewhere between. One curiosity, love divinations. Girls drop apple peels over their shoulders, watching the curl form letters of a future husband's name. Others hum songs while plucking daisies, chanting, "He loves me not." You've tried it yourself, laughing when the last petal insists on "he loves me not." At night, you hear tales of charms. Sleep with a sprig of rosemary under your pillow, and you'll dream of your true love. Touch the first new calf of spring, and you'll marry within a year. You half believe, half smile, as dreams carry the rest. Still, whispers carry risks. A stolen glance can become a rumor. A rumor can grow into judgment. You feel it in the way conversations hush when you step closer, the way laughter stumbles into silence. Your heart flutters anyway. A boy grins as he hands you a jug at the well. Your fingers brush, and the warmth lingers far longer than the water. Later, his name drifts through the gossip like a leaf on a stream. You blush, though you tell yourself you don't care. Love can be sudden, but marriages are practical. Dowries matter, blankets, pots, a cow if fortune smiles. The family standing matters, too. The Lord Steward keeps lists of who owes what, and a poor match can mean hardship for years. Your father sighs one evening, muttering about pigs and fields, as if affection itself could be counted in livestock. You stir the pot, pretending not to listen, though your cheeks burn hotter than the fire. Historians still argue whether young women married earlier than men. Some say girls as young as 14. Others point to later ages when dowries were ready. You do not know your own fate yet, only that the whispers grow louder with every festival, every Sunday, every market. In the meantime, you steal joy where you can. A glance in church when everyone's heads bow. A song hummed a little louder so it drifts toward the one listening. A laugh shared over spilled water. The clumsy grace of two people pretending not to notice what everyone already does. And yes, heartbreak has its place too. You hear of a girl whose betrothal broke when her dowry chest proved too light. Another weeps because her beloved was promised elsewhere. The green holds not only laughter but tears. Yet there is sweetness in uncertainty. The thrill of not knowing, the delight of what might be. The way your heart beats faster when you hear a name carried in gossip. The way your smile hides itself, even when it wants to shine. Sleepy refrain, soft and slow. Breathe in laughter. Breathe out longing. Breathe in whispers. Breathe out fear. Let the night carry your secrets. Let the stars hold them safe. Let the gossip fade into silence while you drift. But even whispers of love cannot shield you from the larger rhythm of life. Storms gather, crops fail, winters bite harder than hearts can heal. And soon, you will learn that hardship is as constant a companion as hope. The sky is a book you cannot stop reading. Each cloud a warning, each wind a whisper. And when storms gather, the whole village holds its breath. Rain begins as a blessing. It taps on a roof, soft as fingers on a drum. It feeds the fields, wakes the seeds, fills the wells. But too much, and blessing becomes curse. The paths sink into mud, the rivers swell, the grain rots in the ground. Your father mutters at the door, watching water drown his furrows. Your mother shakes her head at the flour bin, already too light. You clutch your shawl tighter, knowing the storm outside is also one inside your stomach. Historians still argue which harvest failures were worst, the Great Famine of 1315 or smaller local crises that struck villages unseen by records. What they agree on is this. Hunger came often, and it was merciless. The well-known fact is grim. A single bad harvest could ripple into years of hunger. Grain stores emptied, seed for next season eaten, debts piled like logs waiting for a fire. And famine does not travel alone. It drags sickness with it, fevers that spread faster in weak bodies. You feel it in the smaller meals. Thinner pottage, bread stretched with beans, peas, even ground-up acorns. The taste is bitter, but you chew anyway. Every mouthful is survival. Curiosities surface even in hardship. Your neighbor swears an onion hung above the door keeps famine from crossing the threshold. Another leaves breadcrumbs for birds, believing generosity will bring generosity back. You wonder if birds tell stories about kind villages, the way villagers tell stories about saints. The priest preaches patience. Storms are trials. Hunger is purification. Yet you notice his loaf seems a little thicker than yours. You try not to think about it, but the thought sticks like husk between teeth. Winter sharpens the hardship. Snow presses against the door. Air leaks through the thatch. Your fingers crack from the cold. Your breath fogs the air indoors. Every log of firewood burns too quickly, every cloak too thin. You remember wrapping your straw mattress with spare cloth, hoping to trap a little warmth. Still, the chill gnaws like a mouse in the walls, persistent, unseen, never satisfied. Historians still argue whether medieval winters were colder than ours. Speaking of the Little Ice Age, whatever the scholars decide, your skin already knows the truth. Cold is a history written on your hands. When storms strike harder, flood, famine, frost, the village closes ranks. Neighbors share what they can, but whispers of envy grow sharper. Why does one family's goat survive when another's does not? Why does one hearth burn while another stays dark? Resentment brews quietly, as dangerous as the storm itself. And sometimes desperate fingers steal. Your mother nails the shutters tighter, not against wind, but against want. Yet even in hardship, moments of strange beauty appear. Ice paints feathers on the windows, glimmering in candlelight. The silence of snow feels holy, like a blanket laid across the world. You find yourself laughing when your brother's breath puffs clouds from his nose. For a moment, the cold becomes play. Curiosities abound in these moments too. Some villagers say thunder in winter foretells plague. Others insist that if you burn you branches in the hearth, storms will soften. You watch the branches crackle, uncertain whether faith or fire warms the room. Hunger teaches patience, but also cunning. You learn to scrape every pot, to nibble every crust, to treasure crumbs. You find yourself chewing on dreams. Dreams of honey cakes, of warm loaves, of roasted apples dripping juice. Dreams feed the spirit when the body waits. Sleepy refrain, long and steady. Breathe in storm. Breathe out fear. Breathe in silence. Breathe out hunger. Let the rain soften to a hush. Let the wind settle into lullaby. Let the ache ease, if only for tonight. Storms pass as all things pass. The land dries. The fields recover. Bread thickens again. But the memory stays, etched into your bones, whispered at every meal, folded into every prayer. You know now that survival is fragile. And when night falls, tales rise of witches, omens, and spirits that explain what storms cannot. Fear moves from the sky into the firelight, and superstition takes its turn. The storm has passed, but fear lingers. When the fields are quiet and the hearth burns low, stories take root. You sit by the fire, knees tucked under your dress, shadows stretching long across the walls. This is when superstition lives its fullest life, when the night is heavy and the mind wanders. Your grandmother begins with a whisper. Her voice creaks like the rafters above you. She speaks of witches in the woods, women who can sour milk with a glance, who dance with shadows instead of men. She warns that a sudden sickness, a withered cow, a broken tool, these are not accidents, but curses. You shiver, though the hearth is warm. Your younger brother scoots closer, eyes wide. Even your mother, who shakes her head, does not quite smile. Belief, here, is too close to fear to dismiss. Historians still argue how deeply peasants believed in witchcraft before the great persecutions of later centuries. Some claim it was merely folklore. Others insist it was a living fear woven into every night. All you know is that the silence after these tales feels heavy enough to press on your chest. Curiosities spring from every corner. A horseshoe nailed above the door keeps evil out. Salt scattered across the threshold confuses spirits so they cannot cross. If your ears ring suddenly, someone is speaking your name. You touch your ear at the memory, half hoping it is a kind word, half afraid. Your father tells of will-o'-the-wisps, pale flames that bob above marshes. Follow them, he warns, and you'll sink into mud forever. Your brother gasps. You imagine the flicker of light, the pull of curiosity, and the cold hand of water closing above your head. There are saints, too, woven into these fears. Saint Apollonia guards teeth, Saint Blaise throats, Saint Rock plagues. A candle lit in their names is both shield and plea. You learn their feast days not as holy trivia, but as lifelines in a world where sickness always waits nearby. Yet still, the darker stories cling. A black dog at the crossroads is a messenger of death. An owl hooting at dusk foretells illness. A hare running across your path might be a witch in disguise. Your mother once laughed at that last one, but the next day, the neighbor's goat went lame. The laughter died quickly. You recall, too, the remedies tied to superstition. A dried herb pouch hung over a cradle to keep fairies from stealing a baby. Breadcrumbs scattered at the edge of the woods to distract wandering spirits. A charm carved into wood, tucked beneath the hearthstone, so no witch could cross. Historians still argue whether these charms were condemned by priests or quietly tolerated. You've seen priests shake their heads, but you've also seen them bless the same charms with holy water. Perhaps survival bends rules more than doctrine does. The fire pops, sending sparks upward. You jump, your heart quickening, as if the sparks themselves were omens. Your grandmother smiles knowingly, stirring the coals with her stick. Everything speaks if you listen, she says. And you believe her, though you wish you didn't. Sleep creeps in with the stories. Your eyes droop, but your mind keeps replaying images. Witches on moonlit hills, black dogs in crossroads fog, spirits tapping at the shutters. You tug the blanket higher, tucking your toes into safety. The candle flame bends in the draft, and for a moment, you swear it is nodding at you. Sleepy refrain, hushed and slow. Breathe in warmth. Breathe out fear. Breathe in shadow. Breathe out story. Let the crackle of fire soften into silence. Let the owl outside hoot itself into dream. Let the night hold its mysteries without reaching your bed. By morning, superstition seems lighter, like mist burning off the fields. Work returns, chores wait, the sun is bright. But the whispers remain, tucked in memory, ready to wake again at the next storm, the next sickness, the next unexplained shadow. And beyond superstition lies another shadow, one not born of spirits, but of men, the shadow of the Lord and his power, the kind that does not vanish with sunlight. The sun is high, the fields stretch golden, and yet your labor is never fully your own. For every furrow, every sheaf, every egg gathered from the nest, a portion belongs not to you, but to the Lord. His shadow stretches over the village, as long and certain as the church tower's bell. You know his manor well. It rises beyond the hedges, larger than any cottage, its timber beams strong, its roof tiled instead of thatched. To you, it looks like a fortress of plenty. To him, it is merely home. The road that leads to his door feels heavier under your feet, as if tolls are built into the very dirt. The steward comes often, on horseback, cloak swinging like a banner. He calls the tally, eggs, grain, hens, Labor Day's owed. Your father listens, jaw clenched but words measured. There is no bargaining. The dues are fixed like the seasons. Historians still argue whether the feudal system was crushing or merely expected. Some paint peasants as bent under endless taxes. Others suggest it was a bargain, protection for labor, order for obedience. For you, the truth is simpler. The Lord always takes, and you always give. You owe him work in the fields, your back bent in soil not yours. You owe him coin, scraped from market days. You owe him poultry, a tithe of eggs, sometimes even a goat. And when the church bell rings for tithe, a tenth of your harvest belongs not to your table, but to God's. Between Lord and priest, your table feels small indeed. Curiosities soften the picture only slightly. Your mother recalls a feast once given by the Lord, bread, ale, even roasted meat offered to villagers after a wedding. For one night, he was generous. For every other night, he is owed. The manor court gathers on the green, and you have watched its judgments. Disputes over hedgerows, over pigs in the wrong field, over debts unpaid. The steward sits stern, the lord above him, the villagers below. A man fined for theft is ordered to repay with labor. A woman scolded for gossip is warned sharply, her shame as loud as the bell. You wonder if justice is truly served, or if it is only the lords will dressed in law. Historians still argue whether medieval lords were harsh or paternal. Some records show cruelty, others kindness. You have glimpsed both. A loaf gifted after a famine, a tax raised the very next season. Kindness, perhaps, is only another coin to be spent. At times, the Lord rides through the fields. His horse gleams, his cloak flares, his boots never touch mud. He nods to no one, his gaze fixed ahead. You bow your head, hands tightening on your rake. Your heart beats faster, though you could not say if it is fear, anger, or awe. You hear stories, too, of lords who hoard grain during famine, of others who forgive debts when storms ruin crops. You hope yours will be the latter, though hope is thin as broth. Curiosity reaches even here. One neighbor insists the lord's wife keeps a pet monkey, a creature from far-off lands. Another swears the manor has glass windows, clear as ice, instead of horn or cloth. These marvels make the manor feel less like home, more like a castle in a fairy tale. Yet the truth is plainer. The manor is power. It reminds you daily that you live on borrowed land, under borrowed grace. As night falls, you sit by the hearth and count silently. How many eggs remain after tithe? How much grain after dues? The numbers are small, but they keep you awake longer than the fire. Sleepy refrain, heavy but steady. Breathe in duty. Breathe out fear. Breathe in burden. Breathe out surrender. Let the Lord's shadow pass. Let the steward's tally fade. Let the night remind you that the stars belong to no one. And yet, not all burdens come from lords and stewards. Some bleat in the night, scratch at the door, crow at dawn. For in your cottage, animals live as closely as family, and their presence fills every corner of your day. Before the rooster crows, you already know the animals are awake. They shift, rustle, grunt, and cluck around the cottage, as much a part of family life as your brother snores. You live not only with people, but with creatures, companions, workers, sometimes nuisances, always necessary. The rooster, of course, is first. He struts across the floorboards, head high, wings puffed. His crow splits the air like a trumpet, though dawn is still deciding whether to arrive. You groan, pull the blanket over your head, but makes no difference. The rooster is the cottage's alarm clock, and there is no snooze button. Chickens scuttle in corners, scratching at straw laid across the floor. Now and then, one hops onto a low bench, staring at you with a beady, judgmental eye. Their eggs are treasure, fragile and warm. Each one feels like a coin from heaven, and you carry them with reverence. The pig grunts outside, a sound like someone clearing his throat for hours. Pigs are wealth, louder than coins, but just as valuable. Your father calls it walking bacon, a meal in waiting that grows fatter each week. You giggle, but you also help feed it scraps, knowing your winter may depend on that noisy belly. Historians still argue whether pigs roamed freely through medieval villages or stayed penned. Some records show them wandering lanes, noses buried in refuse. Others suggest lords fined peasants for letting pigs root too freely. All you know is that your pig has a personality big enough for two men. Goats bleat from their rope tether, tugging with the stubbornness of saints. You've learned to milk them with patience, hand steady, bucket balanced. Sometimes the stream splashes your dress, and you mutter, but you still smile. Milk means butter, cheese, and life. And goats, mischievous as children, give you all three, though they'd eat your laundry if you let them. A cow in a neighbor's yard moos long and low. Her eyes are wide, her breath warm as bread. Cows are rarer, prized, sometimes shared by whole families. Your village knows which cow belongs to whom, as surely as they know which child. Oxen work in the fields, broad-shouldered, slow and steady. Their yokes creak, their hooves sink deep, but without them, the plow would stall. They are not pets, not companions, but partners in survival. You watch them sometimes, amazed at their patience, living engines before engines were ever imagined. Curiosity comes from smaller beasts, too. Cats prowl the rafters, tails twitching. Some villagers welcome them, guardians of grain against mice. Others whisper that cats, especially black ones, are witches' companions. You stroke one anyway, its purr louder than fear. Dogs circle the cottage yard. Not sleek pets, but lean guardians with ribs sharp under fur. They bark at strangers, chase foxes, guard hens. Sometimes they lick your face when you drop scraps, a brief softness in their fierce lives. Inside the cottage, animals and humans share the same air. The smell of straw, dung, smoke, and mingles. You wrinkle your nose, then shrug. This is not filth, this is home. Historians still argue whether peasants lived with animals indoors during winter or kept them strictly in sheds. Archaeological traces suggest both. Your family chooses warmth, better a goat by the hearth than frost in the bed. Curiosities of belief color even the animals. A crow perched on the roof is a bad omen. A hen that lays an unusually small egg might be cursed. A dog howling at night warns of death nearby. You half believe, half laugh, as you scatter feed and whisper a prayer. Still, animals bring joy. Your brother chases chickens. Your mother hums while milking. Your father scratches the pig's back with a stick until it groans with delight. Even the goat's stubborn tug makes you laugh more often than it makes you curse. As evening falls, you gather eggs, tether goats, sweep straw into piles. The animals settle, their noises softer, their bodies warm against the cool air. Their presence feels like a heartbeat under the house, steady and grounding. Sleepy refrain, gentle and low. Breathe in clucks. Breathe out bleats. Breathe in purrs. Breathe out sighs. Let the barnyard sounds soften into lullaby. Let the pig's grunt become a hum in your dreams. Let the rooster wait just this once for morning. But the village is not always so soft. Justice lives here too, not written in books, but acted out in the square. And soon, you will see how law feels in a place where everyone knows your name. The green that once rang with fiddles and laughter can change its face in an instant. Today, no ribbons fly, no drums beat. Instead, a wooden post and a pair of stocks stand at the center, waiting. The village gathers, voices low, eyes sharp. Justice, in its medieval shape, is about to speak. You stand with the others, shifting on tired feet. Children are hushed, though some peek through fingers with wide-eyed curiosity. Your father folds his arms. Your mother keeps her face carefully blank. The steward calls the first name, his voice carrying like a bell. A man is accused of stealing firewood from the Lord's forest. It sounds small, just sticks, branches, kindling. But the forest belongs to the Lord, and every twig is counted. The man pleads hunger, his voice cracking. The steward frowns, shakes his head, and finds him a week of labor. Historians still argue whether manorial courts were cruel or simply practical. Records show endless small disputes, broken hedges, wandering pigs, unpaid rents. Some punishments were harsh, others light. But always, the Lord's right was clear, his word, his forest, his rule. Next, a woman accused of brewing weak ale. The ale taster, yes, that is his real role, swears her brew was thin as water. Laughter ripples through the crowd, but the steward does not smile. Ale is not only drink, but currency, wages, sustenance. Weak ale cheats the system. She is ordered to brew again, properly, under watchful eyes. Curiosity curls at the edges. Did you know villages sometimes appointed ale conners to test the strength of every brewer's batch? They wore leather breeches, sat on soaked benches, and judged by, well, how sticky their trousers became. You imagine such a scene and stifle a giggle, quickly hidden in your sleeve. Then comes gossip, raised accusation. One neighbor claims another's pig wandered into her beans. Voices rise, hands point. The pig in question squeals as if adding its own defense. The steward listens, then rules, a fine of beans owed, plus a public scolding. The crowd nods, balance restored. Yet you feel how fragile it is. Law and rumor are close cousins. Stocks stand ready for harsher sentences. You have seen them used. Men locked by ankles, women by wrists, left in the square. Children throw mud. Neighbors mutter insults. Shame does the work chains cannot. The punishment is not only time lost, but dignity stripped. Historians still argue whether these public shames kept order or bred resentment. Some say they deterred crime. Others note how often the same names reappear in records. Perhaps shame fades faster than hunger. Superstition sometimes creeps into justice. A woman once accused of bewitching a cow was forced to carry hot iron across the square. If her hand blistered, guilt was proven. If not, God had cleared her. Your stomach twists remembering her cry, the way everyone looked away. The cow recovered, but no one spoke of it again. Curiosities appeared too in village oaths. To swear innocence, a man might place his hand on a relic, or call 12 neighbors to swear on his honesty, a compurgation of trust. Law, in this place, is less about evidence than about reputation. And reputation is fragile, breakable as an eggshell. The session ends. The steward closes his ledger. The Lord's clerk rolls up parchment, and the crowd disperses. The stocks remain silent but waiting. Children creep near them, daring each other to place a wrist inside. You shudder, tug your brother's sleeve, and walk away quickly. Sleepy refrain, solemn and slow. Breathe in order. Breathe out fear. Breathe in silence. Breathe out judgment. Let the green return to grass. Let the voices fade into murmurs. Let the law sleep, at least until the next quarrel stirs it awake. But not every visitor to the green brings judgment. Sometimes, rare as rain in summer, a traveler arrives. A peddler with a pack on his back, goods from beyond the hedges, stories from beyond the hills. And his arrival makes the village feel, for one fleeting moment, like the center of the world. One morning, as you sweep straw from the cottage door, you hear a cry on the road. It is not a rooster's crow, nor the steward's bark, nor the fiddler tune. It is something brighter, sharper, filled with promise. A man's voice calling out, "Fine goods, wares from afar, stories for a coin." The peddler has come. He appears like a walking stall, his back bent under the weight of a wooden pack strapped with leather. Bright ribbons spill from the edges, glinting buckles catch the sun, and the faint jangle of metal hints at knives or bells within. Children race to the road, circling him like sparrows. Even the dogs, usually fierce, wag their tails at the smell of spice and salted meat. You feel excitement hum in your chest. Market days are predictable, but a peddler? He is possibility itself. He sets up near the green, his goods spread on a cloth. Needles gleam like silver slivers. Pins shine sharper than thorns. Small mirrors, rare as rainbows, catch the sun and dazzle wide eyes. Your mother gasps softly. A new needle could change her sewing, save her fingers for breaking thread. A mirror could show her face clearly, not just as a blur in polished iron. Even a simple comb feels like luxury. Historians still argue how often peddlers visited villages. Some say weekly, others only a few times a year. But every record agrees. When they arrived, they carried the outside world on their shoulders. Curiosities spill from his pack. A pouch of saffron, glowing like bottled sunlight. A twist of pepper, dark and sharp as night. A piece of cloth dyed deep blue with woad, the color of twilight skies. He places it on the cloth with a flourish, and gasps ripple through the crowd. One neighbor insists the spice keeps demons from entering the cottage. Another swears pepper can cure toothache if chewed on a holy day. The peddler shrugs, smiling. Who is he to argue with prophet? He carries stories too. He speaks of towns where streets are paved with stone, wide enough for 3 carts side by side. He tells of fairs so large that a man could wander 3 days without seeing every stall. He whispers of pilgrims returning from Santiago, their cloaks pinned with scallop shells. Your brother's mouth falls open. Your father nods, skeptical but listening. You, meanwhile, feel your heart leap. The world beyond the hedges suddenly feels enormous, shimmering with mystery. Historians still argue whether peasants were truly isolated or more connected than we think. Coins, badges, and records of distant marriages hint at surprising movement. But for you, standing barefoot on the green, the peddler is your proof. The world is larger than your cottage. He pulls out a rosary carved of wood, beads smoothed by countless fingers. The priest frowns, perhaps jealous of competition, but villagers lean closer anyway. Then, with a grin, he reveals something stranger still. A small puppet, painted crudely, strings tangled like ivy. He makes it dance clumsily, and children shriek with laughter. You laugh too, even as you cover your mouth. To see a tiny figure bow and twirl is almost magical, a glimpse of playfulness in a life usually too heavy for such things. Not all trust the peddler. A neighbor mutters that some carry more lies than goods, that their packs hide tricks as much as treasures. The steward eyes him sharply, perhaps measuring whether tax might be owed. Yet the crowd stays, pulled by curiosity stronger than caution. Your mother buys a new needle. The coin feels heavy in her hand, but she smiles when she tucks the needle away. A tool, yes, but also a sliver of hope, sharp enough to pierce the fabric of hardship. The peddler lingers into evening, telling one last story. He speaks of knights riding to war, banners bright as autumn leaves, of castles with walls so high they scrape the sky, of seas so wide a man might sail for weeks and never see land. You close your eyes, trying to picture it. The sound of hooves, the shine of armor, the endless roll of waves. The world feels both terrifying and beautiful, distant yet close enough to touch. Sleepy refrain, soft and wide. Breathe in wonder. Breathe out walls. Breathe in stories. Breathe out smallness. Let the peddler's voice become dream. Let the scent of saffron drift into your pillow. Let the needle's glint shine in your mind like a star. By morning, he is gone. Only a few footprints and a patch of flattened grass mark where his pack once rested. But the echo of his visit lingers. Needles sharper, ribbons brighter, dreams bigger. And soon, the dreams he carried will sour into whispers of something darker. War is not a story told by peddlers alone. It is a rumor carried by every wind, and it will find your village whether you invite it or not. The peddler's stories do not leave at dawn. They hang in the hedges like spider silk, catching every breeze. By midday, they have turned into something heavier than wonder. They have turned into rumor. You first hear it at the well. A woman murmurs that riders were seen on the northern road, banners bright, hooves sharp as drumbeats. Another says a levy is being counted in the next village. Men to carry spears, boys to carry bread. No one speaks loudly. War begins as a hush. Your father comes home with the look he wears when the steward is near. He says the Lord has called for carts to haul grain to the manor granary. Protection, the steward claims. You know the word can mean many things. It can mean your bread in someone else's hands. Historians still argue whether villagers feared foreign armies more than their own. Some chronicles paint marauders as wolves in borrowed colors. Others blame friendly troops who ate the countryside bare. For a peasant, uniforms are less important than boots and hunger. Either kind will trample a cabbage patch. You help your mother bury what she can in earthen jars behind the cottage: salt, a little honey, a handful of beans. You think of the iron nail above the loaf. Magic seems thin today. Still, you touch the red thread at your wrist, the one the wise woman tied. It steadies your breath as surely as any prayer. The church bell becomes a different sound, not only a summons to Mass, but a warning if strangers are seen. You imagine the bell rope snapping from use, the tower coughing smoke like a signal fire. The fantasy makes you smile for half a heartbeat, then fades. A well-known fact: when war rolled across France and England in the 100 Years' War, mounted raids, chevauchés, spread fire through fields to starve enemy lords. It was not castles that suffered most. It was villages like yours, skin of the land scraped raw. The lesson crosses borders easily. Armies travel on stomachs, and peasants are the pantry. Your father sharpens the sickle anyway. This is not bravery, it is habit. Steel makes men feel larger than fear, even if the steel is meant for barley, not battle. Curiosities cling to soldiers the way burrs cling to cloaks. Someone swears that a scrap of saint's bread tucked in a shoe blisters less on a march. Another claims a coin stamped with the king's face deflects arrows if worn against the heart. No one volunteers to test that. On Sunday, the priest's sermon changes color. He speaks of obedience, oaths, God's will threaded through banners and lances. He does not mention the tithe of grain already sitting in his bins. You try to listen for comfort, but the incense smells like smoke from a burning field. Historians still argue whether medieval soldiers were mostly paid professionals or neighbors called up with poorly fitted spears. Payrolls show wages. Manorial rolls show obligations. You look around the nave and count shoulders, hands, mouths. The math is simple. Every arm in a war is an arm not in a field. Boys throw sticks in the lane and shout "Archer" at one another. Your brother boasts he can hit the ash tree at 20 paces. He misses, then claims he was aiming for the ditch all along. You ruffle his hair and pretend to believe him. A quiet truth drifts from a traveler. In England, a statute once ordered men to practice the longbow on holy days. Church in the morning, arrows in the afternoon. Piety and practice braided like a rope. You picture targets set by the green where the stocks stand, and the thought makes you shiver. War does not arrive in a single clang of hooves. It arrives as prices that creep. Salt dearer, grain stingier, cloth measured with a shorter stick. The peddler's needles would cost more today than yesterday, and he is no longer here to argue the rate. The Lord's messenger appears at dusk, horse lathered, voice clipped. Carts must stand ready by sunrise. Mills will run longer. The smith must shoe 6 additional hooves by noon. You watch your father nod, his mouth a thin line. Obedience keeps families intact, most of the time. That night, sleep is a door that will not latch. Your mind walks the lanes even as your body lies still. You hear hoofbeats in every gust. You imagine helmets as polished as your mother's small mirror, and faces you cannot see behind a shine. Sleepy refrain, low and steady. Breathe in quiet. Breathe out clamor. Breathe in hearth smoke. Breathe out fear. Let the bell be only a bell. Let the road be only a road. Let your breath outlast rumors. Morning brings proof of something, if not of war itself. 2 riders pass the hedge, colors you do not know flapping like torn sky. They do not stop. They do not need to. Their speed is a message. Be ready, be small, be gone if you must. Your mother ties up the goats, tighter than usual. You gather eggs and hide 2 beneath a loose floorboard. A foolish treasure, perhaps, but in a hungry world, eggs are gold that can hatch. Curiosity flickers even now. Your neighbor chalks a strange mark above his door, a cross with a loop. Old soldier's trick, he mutters, means we've nothing to take. You glance at your cottage, smoke, chickens, the smell of bread, and no any rider with a nose will read a different sign. At midday, a handful of men from the next village come limping through, mud up to their knees. They do not look like heroes. They look like farmers who have misplaced their fields. One carries a spearhead wrapped in cloth, as if iron were a delicate fruit. You offer a dipper of water. He drinks as if it were wine. Historians still argue whether villagers welcomed returning men with pride or with dread. Pride for stories. Dread for what stories cost. You feel both tighten in your chest like an unlaced bodice. By evening, the road is empty again. Rumor lingers, but the pot still needs stirring. The loom still wants thread. The goat still eyes your hem with culinary intent. Life insists on being lived, even when it crouches. Your father says softly that if banners rise nearby, you may flee to the church. Sanctuary, he whispers, as if the word itself were a bolt. You picture everyone crammed beneath the stone vault, breath stacked like firewood. You picture the door and how it argues with axes. You warm your hands over the hearth and think of the wise woman's salve. Marigold, beeswax, the smell of summer caught in a jar. It occurs to you that jars keep many things, salves, beans, secrets. You wish one could keep peace. Then, as if the world remembers another tune, a different sound carries from the green. Laughter, a pipe, thin and reedy. Someone shouting your name with a grin in the voice. Against all sense, a wedding has not been postponed. The banns were cried, the bread was baked, the ale cannot be unbrewed. War may hover at the hedges, but the village will not surrender a feast to a rumor. You wrap your shawl and step into the lane. The sky is pink over the fields, tender as a peeled apple. For an hour at least, perhaps an evening, you will choose ribbons over rumors. And you will watch two hands meet and promise the ordinary miracles of bread, blankets, and children who chase chickens. Of course, feasts draw more than laughter. Feasts draw eyes, and you will learn, before the benches are cleared, that joy is not invisible to the world outside the hedges. Not tonight, but soon. The rumor of war keeps its distance for an evening. Instead, bells lift over hedges, bright and insistent, as if the sky itself were being invited. You step into the lane with your shawl, following laughter like a trail of crumbs. At the church door, garlands hang, hawthorn and rosemary braided with ribbon. Rosemary for remembrance, your mother whispers, tucking a sprig into your hair. You breathe its sharp green and feel steadier, as if a hedge grew around your heart. Inside, the nave is a river of faces. The bride's dress is plain will turn glorious by a linen veil and a belt tied in a careful knot. The groom's tunic is brushed smooth, so its brown looks almost noble. A well-known fact, since the Fourth Lateran Council in 1215, the banns must be cried. 3 Sundays of public notice, so hidden marriages cannot tangle kinship like threads. You recall hearing their names last week, woven among prayers like a promise counted aloud. The priest speaks, voice steady, eyes kind. The couple's hands meet, right hand to right hand, and vows fall into the air like grain into the furrow, simple, weighty, enough. Historians still argue whether hand fasting, the clasp of hands with witnesses, itself made a binding marriage before church solemnization. Some say the spoken consent was the marriage. Others insist the priest's blessing sealed it. You watch the fingers tighten and think, whatever the books decide, something sacred just moved from my to is. Outside, the green is set like a table too large for a cottage to hold. Boards rest on barrels, cloths smoothed by many palms, platters waiting. Women bustle like sparrows. Men haul casks, Children hover with the patience of wolves around a carcass. Ale foams into jugs, rich and eager. Someone pours a cup thick with spice and honey. The bride ale, sweet enough to coat a throat with celebration. You taste it. Warmth walks your chest, slow and amber. Bread arrives in baskets, round loaves scored with care. You think of the iron nail above your family's loaf. Tonight, superstition takes a holiday, but habit still nods from the shelf in your mind. Roasting meat turns on spits, fat hissing where it kisses flame. Onions go soft in their skins. Apples sag into sweetness. Even scarcity loosens its belt when a wedding is near. Curiosity glitters among the customs. A bride cup, shared and rimmed with rosemary, passes from hand to hand, and whoever spills it is teased as a friend to clumsy futures. You sip without trembling and are absurdly proud of the steadiness of your wrist. A woman rolls out a spice cake, the top pricked with little holes in a pattern like stars. Pepper, she whispers, for luck, and to remind the tongues to be kind. You grin at the irony and take a cautious bite that pricks like friendly pins. Someone throws a shoe as the couple steps away from the church porch. It thuds near the groom's heel to cheers. The future, apparently, prefers to be nudged into obedience. Music climbs into the evening. A fiddler finds the pulse. A pipe threads tune through the heat of bodies. You feel it tug your feet as surely as the loom tugs your hands. Pattern, pull, repeat. But tonight the pattern is joy. Dancers form rings, hands damp, eyes bright. The carol circles left, then right, weaving neighbors into a human braid. You're caught, then carried, a leaf in a friendly current. Historians still argue whether peasants danced more in lines or circles, whether steps were fixed or borrowed and remade. You suspect the answer is whatever fits the ground and the mood. Tonight, the ground is generous and the mood has pockets full of laughter. The gifts are practical and shining. A pot with a mended lip, a length of homespun, a hen held like a crown. Your mother offers needles wrapped in a twist of blue thread, a luxury that makes the bride's breath catch. You recognize the peddler's glint in that thread and feel how far a single coin can travel. The bride's belt is unknotted with ceremony, an old symbol turned gentle. Women fuss and laugh and adjust the veil until it sits like a small white cloud. You catch the bride's eyes, nervous, exhilarated, brave, and squeeze her fingers. A loaf is broken above the couple's heads. Crumbs fall like good omens. Children scramble beneath the trestles to catch what the ground will not keep. Some say whoever finds the biggest piece will marry next. You pretend not to see your brother pocket the heel, as if destiny can be smuggled. Stories enter as easily as steam from the kettles. An uncle tells of his own wedding in a snowstorm, the kiss fogging like breath on glass. A grandmother swears she danced until her shoes wore thin as onion skin. Laughter stitches the memories together like a seam strong enough to tug. You help carry platters, refill jugs, tuck stray curls behind ears slick with sweat. The air tastes of rosemary and smoke. Your cheeks ache from smiling. Your feet learn joy's particular fatigue. Sleepy refrain, gentle and bright. Breathe in music. Breathe out worry. Breathe in bread. Breathe out hunger. Let the drum become a heartbeat. Let the pipe become a breeze through barley. Let the laughter become waves folding softly against the shore. Not all moments are light. You see the steward at the edge of the green, counting jugs with his eyes, measuring what celebration costs in grain and hours tomorrow. His presence is a crease in the cloth of the evening. You smooth it with stubborn cheer. A neighbor mutters that the levy will come after all, feast or no feast. Eat now, he says, not unkindly. Food is brave. You nod because the truth tastes like ale, warming, slightly bitter, necessary. Night leans closer. Torches rise like small suns on sticks. Moths come to sermon at the flames. The congregation is unruly but devout. The bedding customs, some riotous, some tender, circle like rumors. In some villages, friends would escort the couple with jokes and a clatter of pots. In others, the door would be shut softly, a secret written in breath. Historians still argue how bawdy or private these rites were, and whether chivalry, noisy mockery, guarded morality, or mocked it. Here, the door closes with a careful latch and a prayer in a mother's eyes. You exhale, as if you had been holding your breath for someone else. You think of all the threads that brought this pair to this night. Well, teased thin, fields weeded, bands cried, dowry saved coin by coin. A marriage is not only vows, it is errands stretched across years. The green settles. The music loosens its grip. Children sleep draped over benches. Cats materialize to inspect the crumbs. Someone hums a hymn without meaning to. The stars look like a spill of salt a careful hand could still reclaim. You walk home slowly, shawl tight, heart warm. At the door you pause, listening to the goats shift, the pigs sigh, the embers gossip in their red language. The cottage smells of smoke and rosemary, a feast carried home in hair and hem. On the table sits a leftover slice of the spice cake, wrapped in linen. You break in half, save the larger for morning, and let pepper prickle your tongue awake one last time. Then you drink a cup of water, and imagine it is the bride ale's sweetness turned pure and cool. Sleep leans on your shoulder. You lay down on straw that crackles like distant applause and pull the blanket high. The night enters quietly, balancing a candle so it will not spill. Sleepy refrain, long and low. Breathe in ribbons. Breathe out roads. Breathe in vows. Breathe out fear. Let the torches gutter safely into stars. Let the last drumbeat walk itself out of your chest. Let the village fold like a cloak around your shoulders. Tomorrow will have its own shape. Perhaps peace, perhaps riders, perhaps only chores lined like bowls on a shelf. Whatever comes, you will meet it with the same hands that spun and sewed and served and danced. But not yet. First, a deeper quiet than the church at dawn. First, a close more tender than a veil. First, the long breathing in of a world that, for tonight, chooses gentleness. Now, dim the embers with a whisper. Let the fan of the night air turn in the rafters. And feel, beneath everything, the certainty that the dark knows how to hold you. Night returns as if it never truly left. It gathers in doorways, pools in the corners, softens the edges of the day until everything feels round and safe. You bank the fire with practiced hands, spreading embers like red constellations under a small hill of ash. The cottage exhales. So do you. You set the wooden spoon in its place. Fold a cloth. Touch the latch twice, the way your mother taught you, habit blessing both. Beyond the door, the lane lies still, a ribbon of dark threaded between hedges. Somewhere, the last laugh from the wedding fades into a yawn. The animals settle into their own slow music. A hen rustles. The goat shifts and sighs. From a yard, the pig offers one last thoughtful grunt, as if agreeing that the world has worked hard enough for one day. A cat melts onto the hearthstones and becomes a purr with a tail attached. Their peace pours into the room like warm milk. You loosen your braid and shake free the dust of hours. Your fingers remember the loom and the sickle and the churn. But they also remember rosemary tucked behind your ear, the red thread at your wrist, the iron nail above the loaf that kept mischief to its manners. Tiny guardians, quiet companions. A well-known fact drifts through the mind just before sleep. Medieval nights were longer than our modern ones. The clock ruled by sun and season more than by bell and business. Candles were dear. Darkness did much of the telling. People rose with stars still out, slept in two gentle halves, or watched the embers and spoke soft as moths. You are part of that rhythm now, a tide without hurry. You listen to the cottage speak. Smoke whispers up through the thatch, threading old stories into the rafters. The floor creaks like an elder clearing her throat to begin a tale. The rushes murmur underfoot, fresh since the wise woman's visit, cleaner now, friendlier. Your body feels held by straw, by wool, by familiarity. Historians still argue whether medieval people feared the night more than we do, or respected it better. Were they cowed by darkness, or comforted by its steady return? You suspect both can be true. Fear comes with the unknown, comfort with the known endings of each day. Tonight, you know the ending: warmth, breath, rest. A small curiosity taps at the window of memory. Some villagers swore that if you spoke kindly to your bread before bed, a good night to the loaf on the shelf, your dreams would turn sweet. You smile in the dark and whisper, "Sleep well, little bread," to no one and everything at once. It feels ridiculous. It feels perfect. You lie down. The straw crackles like applause far away. Your blanket is rough, but it is yours, stitched by your own hands, mended through seasons, strong with stubborn kindness. Your shoulder finds the familiar hollow. Your breath finds the metronome of safety. Sleepy refrain, slow as tide. Breathe in hush. Breathe out hurry. Breathe in ember. Breathe out ache. Let the day loosen at the seams. Let the worry drain like water from a pail. Let the mind stack its tools neatly and close the shed. You let images float past, lazy as thistledown. The market's pepper and ginger. The ale connor's sticky seat and your stifled giggle. The peddler's mirror catching a coin of sun. Will-o'-the-wisps kept politely at Marsh's edge by your grandmother's warning voice. Ribbons from the maypole braided to the wrist of time. The bride's belt unknotted, crumbs falling like blessings. You remember standing small under the Lord's tall gaze, and smaller still under the sky's unconcerned kindness. You remember storms and the patience they demanded, and the remedies, garlic milk, rosemary steam, violet honey, that believe for you when you're too tired to try. You remember the loom's lullaby, thud, swish, pull, and you realize the village has been singing to you all along. Historians still argue about the weight of peasant life, cruel or ordinary, crushed or content. You carry the answer under your ribs. It is heavy and it is bearable because it is shared by hands that pass jugs and lift gates, by voices that trade gossip and hymns, by laughter that decides, stubbornly, to exist. The candle gives a last patient nod and goes out. In the good dark, your ears learn to see. A cricket tries a small sermon by the door. The rafters settle, satisfied. Far off, the bell turns in its sleep and does not ring. You turn, and the blanket turns with you. You yawn, and the cat answers as if to say, yes. Now, the cottage learns your breathing and keeps time. Outside, stars salt the lane with silence. Inside, your chest becomes a harbor and the night an easy tide. Sleepy refrain, longer now, gentler now. Breathe in field. Breathe out fear. Breathe in bread. Breathe out hunger. Breathe in home. Breathe out alone. If worry returns, you have pockets ready for it. A pocket lined with spiced cake crumbs. Another scented with rosemary. Another stitched with a wise woman's marigold. And one more, deepest, sewn from every voice that ever told you a story by firelight. Worry cannot find its way out of such pockets until morning, and by then it has forgotten its name. You do not promise tomorrow anything except your presence. You will rise when the rooster lifts the lid on the sun. You will turn the embers and stir the pot and carry water that cools your palms like river stones. You will weave a little, mend a little, laugh a little, rest a little. This is bravery without heraldry. This is beauty without permission. The night lowers its hand to your forehead in blessing. Your breath slows. Your thoughts space themselves kindly, leaving warm silences between. You're safe enough. You're tired enough. You are enough. Now, dim the lights inside your mind. Turn on the soft background hum of your own breathing. Let the world keep watch while you stop. Let the cottage be your cradle, the straw your shore, the dark your gentle quilt. And sleep, simply fully, like bread cooling on a clean cloth, like a field after rain, like a bell between Sundays. The night is kind here, and so are you to yourself. You have walked through fields and fever, through markets and music, through whispers of war and vows of love. You have learned the weight of chores and the secret lightness of shared laughter. You have remembered the iron nail above the loaf, the red thread at your wrist, the rosemary behind your ear, small protections that, together, feel like a roof over thought. Let your shoulders sink lower and then lower still. Let your jaw unclench the way a gate swings easy when the hinge is oiled. Let your eyes close and find the clean dark that belongs to you. The dark that holds without pressing, that keeps without clutching. If a worry asks to be heard, tell it you will listen in the morning when there is bread and light. If a thought insists on staying, tuck it beneath the pillow with a kindness that does not argue. Here, the only work is rest. The only measure is the softness of your breath. You are safe enough to sleep. You are sheltered by ordinary miracles, warmth, rhythm, repetition, care. The cottage knows your name. The embers remember your hands. The night remembers how to be gentle. Breathe in, slow and smooth. Breathe out, long and easy. Again and once more. You are already on the far side of wakefulness, drifting toward a shore that welcomes every step with quiet sand. I'll keep the hush for you now. The story can fold itself. Your rest is the only ending that matters. Sweet dreams.